Yes, he's there.
Ashwini sir? It's not there. Yes, he's joined. So can we start?
Yes, madam. Yes, please start.
So can we
Yes,
start,
sir.
sir?
Yes.
Yes, sure. Can we have the ICI motto, please, Shehzad bhai?
य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति य एष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्विमाणः निर्विमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्वैता 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 एतद्वैता.
The speaker for today's session, Advocate Ashwini Taneja, the chairman of our Ahmedabad branch, CA Harit Dhariwal, the coordinators for today's session, CA Kaushal Shah and CA Sajid Bogra, and obviously the participants. Wish you all a very good evening and a warm welcome to the speaker for today, Advocate Ashwini Taneja. Before we start, I would now like to request CA Harit Dhariwal, the chairman of our Ahmedabad branch, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Manisha Ben. Thank you, respected Advocate Ashwini Taneja sir. I think sir, it's always a pleasure to see you. He was with us last week also, and a wonderful session with WARC. There were more than 200 participants, and each one appreciated sir's deliberation on that. And so happy that you have joined us today also. The coordinators, Kaushal and Manisha Ben, and all the participants. I will not take much of a time today because I know you all are waiting to hear to sir. But I'll just tell you about the two upcoming events of Ahmedabad branch, which were launched today morning. One is regarding a session on AQMM, Audit Quality Maturity Model, which is supposed to take place tomorrow, 10 to 1 in the morning. And one session on 27th, that is on the basis of project finance and basics of financial due diligence. Two first-time speakers will be taking that session on 27th, evening 3 to 6. And yes, very important investor awareness program with BSC that we are doing on 26th, that is on Sunday, 10 to 1. It will be on the SME listing and also on the startups. So these are the 2-3 events that were planned today morning, which we have launched. And do continue supporting Ahmedabad branch. Thank you, everyone. Manisha Ben, over to you now.
Thank you very much, Harit. So today we have a very wonderful speaker with us who addressed us last week itself, and we are privileged to hearing him again. The topic being interplay of laws dealing with economic offenses with specific reference and emphasis on international transactions. This is a very interesting topic today, and all of us are going to be glued to our laptops to hear him. And I would now like to request CA Kaushal Shah to introduce our learned speaker for today. Over to you, Kaushal. Kaushal?
Hello.
Yeah, Kaushal.
Good evening to all of you. Respected speaker for today's session, Advocate Ashwini Taneja, Chairman, Vice Chairman, and Secretary and members. It gives me immense pleasure to introduce the speaker for today, Advocate Ashwini Taneja, sir. Advocate Ashwini Taneja is a fellow member of ICAI, ICSI, ICWAI. He is also Master of Law. He is formally practiced as a chartered accountant, but his passion for law drawing to practice in that field. He currently is practicing as a lawyer with RRA Legal at Delhi and appearing before Tribunal, High Court and Supreme Court. He is specializing in the area of anti-money laundering, Benami law, Black Money Act, SFIO and income tax matter. Appeared before High Court and Supreme Court. He is also former member of ITAT. He is also prolific speaker and has delivered presentation lectures on various issues of PMLA, Benami law, income tax law, and similar.
Should I take over? Okay, he's coming.
Yes, Kaushal, thank you so much. I think let us applaud sir and welcome him with a big round of applause. Sir, virtual applause from all of us and let us enjoy today's session. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Harit Bhai, for kind words. And looking at you, I think everybody feel a sense of special energy. And today I have the pleasure of interacting with Manisha Madam. Since morning, Manisha Madam has been ensuring that I remain absolutely available for deliberating my thoughts with you. So she has been taking all the efforts and pain for all the participants. I think you should thank Manisha Behan for the timely arrival of me in your session. And this cup of tea, which I was to enjoy being amongst all of you at Ahmedabad, that I am taking myself on your behalf. So Harit Bhai, that cup of tea remains due. But this virtual session, on the one hand, it has given a lot of advantages that all of you, I do not know for which parts of the country, we are all interacting together, despite there being such acute winter here in Delhi. But the disadvantage this internet has given is that interconnect has gone missing somewhere. So, except that, I think there are advantages and advantages only. Anyways, whatever it is, let us try to get the best out of it. So, I am given to understand that the topic which is going on here is with regard to the interplay of various laws, which is under discussion today. And the program which you are attending is, I think, a month long or 2 months long?
It's almost a month now. 1 month has done. Over a month now.
Yes. So it is, I think, centered around, I am probably FEMA. Every topic is regarding FEMA and FEMA only.
Yes.
All right. So if it is FEMA only, then the organizers have still chosen something beyond FEMA. I think the reasons for this is that study of FEMA remains incomplete unless we also try to understand the bearing of issues arising in FEMA on other allied laws and vice versa. Meaning thereby the bearing of issues which might arise around FEMA, which may have direct bearing on FEMA issues, some of which we will definitely discuss today. And also that since you are attending a program very sincerely, we should have some basic ideas of other connected laws also, especially laws dealing with economic offenses, especially those which have direct bearing on FEMA, like PMLA, like Black Money Act, like Prohibition of Benami Property Transaction Act, and income tax, of course, has always been there. So since these laws are either new or has been freshly reinforced by the present dispensation, it becomes essential for all of us to understand, to have a basic grasp of this subject, so that whenever we are faced with any situation that a particular transaction is having multi-dimensional implications, multidisciplinary implications, we are able to advise our client in a proper manner. So I will begin my deliberations with the help of the PPTs for the sake of clarity in my expressions and the understanding by you. Yes. So interplay of laws dealing with economic offenses. So two things I will be discussing. A, what are the allied laws which we must, basics of which we must know, and also how these have got interdisciplinary implications or interplay with each other. This picture, quite interesting. These two chimpanzees, they were attached by ED. And as you are amused to hear it, I was also quite amused and amazed when I saw this picture in the newspaper. I think some of you must have already seen it. So how come ED attaching chimpanzees? It would be anybody's guess. But there is a direct connect, legally speaking also. As you know, the canvas of PMLA is very, very large. So large that you can't even imagine. Any idea which was the most active department during the course of entire Corona, during those times when people were not even walking out of their house? There was one department which was most active. Other than eateries, that is grocery eateries and all that, medical and security. Even railways were shut down, aviation was shut down, transport was shut down. So these three departments, eateries, security and medical. And there was one fourth department only which was most active, whose name is Enforcement Directorate. Entire Corona period, 365 days, it kept working. Somebody may die, somebody may live, somebody may get exposure of Corona, somebody may not, whether either officers are dying, whether the people affected or against whom actions are taken by the officers, they are dying. Irrespective of that, the government thought it appropriate that its functioning should not be stopped. Why I am mentioning all those things? To just indicate one thing, that our government has given a high degree of significance to the enforcement of this law, that is PMLA. So FEMA is included in that. So with the help of another case study, I would like to try to portray how there can be interconnect of, these laws, even upon those lapses or mistakes or irregularities, whatever you may call, which are apparently having no connect. For example, this slide which is open before you. One distillery was set up in the year 2005. And there was some violation allegedly of the Environment Protection Act and Water Pollution Act in the year 2009 on the ground that the water treatment plant was not functioning properly. So a complaint was filed by the Pollution Control Board in Rajasthan. And then that FIR was filed, and thereafter nothing happened. That was pending. But in the year 2018, the Enforcement Directorate started its action. That is 9 years after. 9 years after the filing of the FIR. And then came the notice of attachment of the factory on the ground that you have done violation of Environment Protection Act and violation Water Pollution Act. So when I read the case, I was also quite surprised that how it is possible that there is a violation of these two laws, and FIR is filed and attachment is done by the Enforcement Directorate. Where is the POC, etc., etc.? These were the questions which came to my mind. But the ED's action had its own logic, and we cannot simply ignore them. The logics which were given in the case made out by the ED was that, look, water treatment plant was not functioning well. Extra water was discharged into the river. So there was capacity of 50 KL, 75 KL equivalent water was discharged. So extra production was made. This extra production means extra sales, and this extra production was unlicensed, so illegal, and which constitutes a scheduled offense. So because of this extra production, extra sales, extra profit was earned, and this extra profit is proceeds of crime because it is derived from the scheduled offense. And this extra profit must have been invested into the factory. So factory becomes proceeds of crime, derived from proceeds of crime. So therefore, we have given notice for attachment of the factory. I was also very shocked and surprised. Somehow we could persuade the Honorable Court, that is Honorable Income Tax Appellate Tribunal. I argued it before Honorable Justice Manmohan Singh before his retirement, and I could satisfy the Honorable Court within the framework of law. And that is how he was pleased to grant status quo, meaning thereby he granted stay against the coercive measure from the attachment. So this, status quo is maintained, and but litigation is still going on. So that is the scenario before you. Then in the newspaper, you must have read that that Modi's new Benami law has companies running for cover, because now the enforcement of this Benami property law, Prohibition of Benami Property Transaction Act, has been made throughout the country with vehemence. Whether you take the case of Rajasthan, you take case of Gujarat, I will be quoting some case studies of Gujarat also. You take anywhere in the country, down south or up Shimla, wherever it is. I mean, wherever it is, properties have been attached under Benami. You must have also read the first important news which gained the popularity with regard to this law was when the property of Shah Rukh Khan was attached. That Alibag Bangla of Shah Rukh Khan was attached. So my interview was also published in the Economic Times at that time with regard to that attachment. Then this news is also very important. CBI ED action may now follow IT default probes, multi-agency scrutiny. The three agencies are coordinating amongst themselves as well as using the power of higher order data analytics. So two things will happen. First of all, there will be now data analytics, that too of higher order. Section 72A of PMLA makes a mention specifically of constitution of interministerial task force. Then second thing will be whatever the information will be revealed from this higher order data analytics, three agencies will work in tandem, 3 or 4 agencies, SFIO also included. So CBI, ED, Income Tax Department, SFIO, I mean through Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So these 4 agencies will work together to take whatever actions are possible under these laws upon the offenders or the wrongdoers. Then MOUs are being entered into between the different agencies, investigation agencies. For example, this MOU between SEBI and CBDT to exchange information about various matters. Then I come to this interplay of various laws dealing with economic offenses. Now you would notice from this slide that I have kept this Benami law in the central because of some reason which I will discuss. Now kindly see, there are various legislation in the country controlling the dents in the economy, and all these laws are interconnected with one or the other, with each other in one manner, in one way or the other. For example, there is a strong linkages between the Companies Act and Income Tax Act, Companies Act and Benami law and PMLA, and I will demonstrate how. Now, this case study, which I will be able to discuss on the basis of the slide which is open before you. I hope my slides are very much opening turn by turn.
Yes, sir.
Okay. In any change or improvement you want, please tell me with regard to my speed or volume or whatever.
So it's perfect.
All right. Thank you, madam. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, madam. So I take an example of a person who has done some smuggling. Now, suppose he earns a sum of rupees 10 crore from smuggling. Now, in first scenario, he offers the full amount to tax of rupees 10 crore and makes a mention that this is the amount which he has earned from smuggling. Then let us see what are the possible laws under which action can be taken upon him. Now, under Black Money Act, no action. Under Companies Act, no action. Income Tax Act, no action. PPPT Act, no action. Under PMLA also, he will say, I have clarified everything, no action. Under FEMA, yes. Or Customs Acts, yes, some action may be possible. In the no other law. But if I take a second scenario, wherein the facts, the same kind of transaction, but differently portrayed by him, say out of the 10 crore, he discloses in the income tax return only rupees 4 crore. Out of the balance rupees 6 crores, he sends say 2 crores abroad to be stashed in his bank account, which is not disclosed. And remaining 4 crore he gives to one company, say B Limited, say his name is R, Mr. R gives amount to B Limited, and Mr. R's company is R Limited. So the amount of 4 crore in cash is given by Mr. R to B Limited, so that B Limited deposits that amount by way of check with R Limited, and R Limited in return issues share certificates to B Limited, who the shares are controlled by Mr. R. Then let us see what are the possible offenses under which action can be taken upon him. And in the income tax return, he simply makes a mention that rupees, this whatever amount he is disclosing there, say rupees 2 crores, he says that this amount is earned from trading. He does not mention smuggling, he says earned from trading. Now let us see one by one. First of all, action under Income Tax Act, yes, it will be taken because he has not disclosed the full income. Action under PMLA, yes, because he has portrayed the bad money as good money. Income from smuggling has been portrayed as income from trading. Then action under Black Money Act, yes, because he has stashed money abroad of in his bank account 2 crore rupees, which is not a disclosed bank account. Now let us see PMLA, Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002. Yeah, this I have already touched upon. PPPT Act, the amount of money which is given to B Limited is holding the shares are Benami. So PPPT Act would also be invoked. Those shares will be liable to be attached. Under FEMA, yes, of course, violation would be there. Then if it is a listed company, then under SEBI or also. And if it is a case of a company, whatever transactions he is not recording properly, then he may be liable to be booked under section 212(8) and 447 of Companies Act also. So you can see one transaction, but it can lead to various implications under different laws. Now you would also see kindly in this case that there is a new finding of investigation agencies that the most common ingredient found in the violation of laws related to economic offenses would be that transactions done are Benami in nature. Why I am saying so? Because whosoever offender would be, he would like to hide the transaction, real transaction. He will do it in pseudo names. So since he would make an attempt to hide the transaction and he would do it in pseudo names, so the possibility would be that he would do it in Benami name, in some other name. So therefore, the most likely element in every such wrong transaction will be that there something Benami would be done. Now, what exactly is Benami transaction? But is how we can understand in common language. So in fact, the word Benami, it came into the vogue when Persian language was there in vogue in our country, because it is a Persian word. It's neither Hindi nor Urdu nor Sanskrit. So that means these Benami transactions are happening since ages. Not only they are happening, the governments have endorsed them, allowed them to be done. For example, Indian Trust Act 1882, it's section 81, 82 and 94. It expressly allows Benami transaction to happen. Yes. If you read, then Income Tax Act 1961, its section 281A also allows Benami transaction to happen. But if they allow, then why suddenly there is a prohibition? Because all these sections were repealed. This endorsement was no more applicable. When original Benami ordinance was brought out in May 1988, and when it became the act, in September 1988. Since then, this endorsement is no more permissible. I meaning thereby these Benami transactions are no more legally permissible. Since no implementation agencies were created, therefore, Benami transactions, could not be controlled, could not be acted upon, no action was taken until 2016, when this new amendment act was passed, wherein this entire act has been overhauled. Exhaustive definition of Benami transaction has been given in Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D. And since then, the government has tightened the norms. It is reaching beyond the permissible range, which we can see. So permissible range was where the properties were real Benami. That was the whole idea. But now the action is being taken even upon the listed companies and etc. etc. So Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D, as I mentioned, there are 4 parts. Now to begin with, I will give example about Part A only. As per Section 29A, what is Benami? So this concept of Benami under Section 29A is based upon the concept of duality. Whenever duality is there, Benami checks in. What do I mean by it? Now, suppose there is one gentleman, Mr. A, who wanted to buy property. So he makes payment to the seller, that is Mr. B, for buying the property. But as far as the registration of title is concerned, Mr. A gets it registered in the name of another gentleman, say Mr. C. So Mr. A making payment for buying the property, but registration is done under Mr. C, and Mr. C keeps it for the benefit of Mr. A. So now you see 3 persons are introduced in the picture instead of 2. Simply, ordinarily, there would have been only 2 persons, that is Mr. A and Mr. B. But if one third person is also introduced, some Benami element comes into play. Because Mr. A is the payer of the consideration, Mr. C is the ostensible owner of the property, but Mr. C is keeping the property not for his own benefit, but for the benefit of Mr. A. So ownership can be divided into 2 parts. One part where the owner is a real owner, another part where the owner is a registered or ostensible owner. So duality comes in. Ownership is divided into 2 parts. Then under Section 29A, it becomes Benami. Twin conditions have to be fulfilled. If there is only one condition, that payment is made, or the condition is, or the situation is that only registration is some other name, no, then it will not be Benami. Or if the situation is that benefit is not derived, then it will not be Benami. So twin conditions have to be fulfilled. First condition is that payment should be made by Mr. A. Second condition is that the property must be held by Mr. C for the benefit of Mr. A. So Mr. A must continue to derive the benefit. So deriving of the benefit and payment of consideration. These 2 conditions must be fulfilled. Only then it can be said to be Benami, not otherwise. What is Benami transaction? As I said, there are 4 parts: Part A, Part B, Part C, Part D. So under the law, the Benami transaction has been divided into 2 parts. Part A, I have already explained: properties transferred or held by Benamidar, and consideration paid by beneficial owner, and the property is held for the benefit of the beneficial owner. Then Part B says where the property is held in fictitious name. Say it is held in the name of any god or goddess, any pet. So straight away it will be Benami. Simply on the ground, simply for the reason that property is held in a fictitious name. Fictitious name means not in the name of the person who is recognized under the law as a natural person. Then Part C, where the owner of a property is not aware of its ownership. Meaning thereby there is one real registered owner, but when confronted, he says, no, sorry, I'm not the owner. I don't know if I'm the owner. If this kind of situation is there, or he denies the ownership simply, then it will be also a case of Benami as per the clear mandate of PPPT Act 1988 as amended by the Amendment Act 2016. Now Part D is very, very important part. According to Part D, if the payer of the constitution is not traceable or is fictitious, then such property will also be benami. Now, on the basis of Part D, now department is taking action in all those cases where it failed to take action under Section 68 or 69. Or even if it becomes successful in taking action under 68, 69, such cases are also being roped in under Part D. Very, very dangerous clause. And I would say inappropriately worded. Sorry, there was some network issue. Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry, the issue. I am sharing the screen again. Yes. So kindly see the exceptions are there in Part A only. And this, except these exceptions, I mean, if a situation any case falls in B, C or D, Part B, C or D, there are no exceptions. It is straight away benami, automatically. Nothing is to be proved. If a case falls under Part A, but it is not falling in any of the exceptions, it is benami. So meaning thereby, except these exceptions, a case will straight away fall under benami. So such a wide and wild coverage is there of benami now. And what are those 4 exceptions? When the person is acting in fiduciary capacity as executor, trustee, partner, or director, and property is purchased in his name, then there is a saving. And you would be pleased to note that under Indian Trust Act, also Section 88 also talked about fiduciary capacity. That section has been retained, whereas other sections have been repealed. So Section 88 has been saved, not repealed by original Benami Act. That means the intention of the legislation is very clear that under such cases, there will not be any action of Benami. Now, next part is Karta. If the property is taken in the name of Karta on behalf of HUF, it will not be treated as Benami. And the next is spouse or child. Now, when I made a mention about spouse, you know, this Benami law is bringing different kind of stress and tensions for different persons. So somebody is tense for the reason that his Benami property should not be detected. But somebody is tense for the reason that his Benami Rishta should not be detected. So somebody asked a very interesting questions, because the kind of stress one has, I mean, so would be the question. So somebody asked a question very innocuously, sir, it's all right, spouse case is saved, but the question is whose spouse? So I said, don't be very excited. This slide has been made interesting for you, but in the act, it is clearly mentioned his or her spouse. So it should be your own spouse, not somebody else's spouse in whose name you will buy the property. Then came the another question, sir, child means what? Because it is mentioned any child in the act. So child up to any age would be covered. Then the next clause is brother, sister, lineal descendant or ascendant. If in joint ownership. So brother, sister, you understand, lineal descendant or ascendant means mother, father, grandfather, grandparents, etc. and grandchildren also. So if you buy property in the name of mother, it will not be Benami because of this exception? No, it will be Benami. Because there has to be joint ownership. So you can buy the property in the name of your mother or father or sister or brother, but you have to be joint owner if you want to save it from Benami. Harsh. What did you say? It is very harsh. Yes, it is. Law is law. Law does not necessarily ensure equity in all circumstances. Whatever it is, it is. So therefore, kindly be sure that if you are buying a property in the name of your mother, then please treat it as a gift. Do not treat yourself as owner of the property if you have purchased for your mother. So whatever is to be done, it is to be done with purity. So with the help of Benami law, friends, I try to understand various principles of life, how the life is to be lived. With this simple piece of legislation, I am trying to understand that also, which in the end, I will try to give up my briefing of what I have learned from this fantastic piece of legislation that is Benami law. So one amongst this is that what is to be done, it is to be done as it is being portrayed to be done. If it is done in some other way, there will definitely be some issues, not only in society, but in legal regime also. Then what are the authorities who are controlling Benami law? The enforcement agency's initiating officer, that is Benami Prohibition Unit, which has been carved out of investigation wing, working as part of investigation wing, but being monitored separately, though it comes under DI only. And 26 BPUs have been created in the country, working under the respective DI charge. So there are only two officers, that is approving authority and initiating officer. Approving authority is of rank of additional or joint commissioner, and initiating officer is of rank of assistant or deputy commissioner, that is rank of AO. So the initiating officer has the powers under section 19, 20, 21 to carry out investigation, and under section 24 to carry out the proceedings under section 24 to make attachment and to hold the property as Benami or not. And approving authority has the power to grant approval to certain actions of the initiating officer. Then once the orders are passed by these authorities, then the matter goes to the urging authority. Earlier, the urging authority was common with that of PMLA, but now it has been made separately. So separate authorities there. Now the charge has been given to the competent authority. There are 4 competent authorities in the country. And then after the order is passed by the urging authority within 1 year, then the matter goes to the appellate tribunal. Appellate tribunal is supposed to have 3 members. It is located in Delhi. Principal and the only bench is located in Delhi. Supposed to have 3 members. Now, Honorable Justice Manmohan retired last year. Then the surviving member, Mr. G.C. Mishra, also retired. And then there is nobody in the country in this tribunal. The tribunal is not functioning as on date. So attachments are being done, but remedial mechanism has failed. This is a situation which we are facing in the country today. Then it's interplay with Income Tax Act. So this question arises quite often, whether the provisions under Benami law are additional provisions, or these will be applied where the income tax has not been applied, or what. So 2-3 things I will submit here on law as well as on facts. First of all, on law, you would have noticed that almost in every statute, it is invariably mentioned that this law is in addition to any other law or any other provisions of any other act, and not in subjugation thereof. So these are additional measures. Legislature clarifies again and again that these are additional measures and not in substitute of anything else. So this is the legal stand which has been taken. Now on facts, I would say that it will depend upon facts of every case. Wherever the cumulative application of these two laws will be possible, that is Income Tax Act and Benami law, and wherever action under the one law will mutually exclude the action under other law, that is mutually exclusive situation. It depends upon case to case basis. For example, the first question which arises in our everybody's mind is whether the provisions of Benami law can apply to the transactions covered under section 68 and 69A. Whether simultaneously, cumulatively, or in alternatively, I would say both the answers are correct. They can be made simultaneously also, cumulatively also, alternatively also. Now I will try to explain with the help of an example, real life case. In one case, what happened, one gentleman made surrender after the search, rather during the course of search, that, okay, I offer to make this much payment of tax. Say this much income I offered, say rupees 25 crore. Because the condition of the search team was that once you will make surrender, only then we will leave the premises. So he said, okay, all right, I will make offer to make payment tax on the income of 25 crores. So breakup was prepared. So the breakup included one item of rupees 10 crores, alleged share capital, which was taken as bogus share capital. So he said, okay, I'll pay tax on that. His name was Mr. R, his company's name R Limited, and the capital was taken from 1B Limited. So he paid the taxes and he thought, now the matter ends, it's over. But this happiness was having very, very short life, because within few days, hardly a month had passed when he got another notice from this time from Benami Prohibition Unit, inviting him to record his statement under section 19 of PBPT Act 1988. So he thought, now I have paid the taxes, what he's talking about, B Limited share capital, this, that. Okay, let me go. Raising his collars up, he goes to the Benami Prohibition Unit, meets the initiating officer, and the initiating officer starts recording his statement. And first question is, yes, you have made surrender of rupees 25 crores. Yes, sir. I have paid tax also on that. And the surrender amount includes, breakup includes a sum of rupees 10 crore received from 1B Limited by your company R Limited. Yes, sir. On that also tax has been paid. Matter ends. No. I am just trying to ask, Mr. Dayu says, I'm just trying to ask that when you received check from B Limited, I think before that you met B Limited and handed over cash of rupees 10 crores. Now there is sudden silence, but silence will not convert it into no. So meaning thereby he goes, hands over cash, the cash in lieu of that cash, check amount is given by B Limited to R Limited. In lieu of that check amount, R Limited issues share certificates to B Limited, which are in the name of B Limited, but real controller may be Mr. R. So all these questions are asked, even if the answer is given no or silence is maintained. I mean, the answers are otherwise clear because he has already admitted that this is a bogus share capital. So now IU makes attachment of the shares. Also sum of out of rupees 10 crore, 2 crore lying in the bank account of R Limited, and out of rupees remaining amount 8 crore was spent in buying a property. So that by R Limited, that property is also attached on the ground that these are proceeds of the property, Benami property, and proceeds of Benami property is also included in the definition of property within the provisions of PBPT Act 1988. So that is how situation takes place. Now you kindly tell me, all of you, dear participants, my learned brothers and sisters, I am really grateful and thrilled to be in this August gathering of all of you. So where is the scope of any debate? Can the action of IU be challenged? Very strange situation. So he pays tax under section 68 also there, or 69, whatever is there. Then the action is taken under PBPT Act also. Shares are attached, properties are attached. No, the only scope of debate would be what is the property liable to be attached. Now something is Benami because of his own conduct, admitted facts. Things have come on record like that. So their views may be different. But one school of thought would say only at the best shares can be attached, because shares are admittedly Benami, because B Limited is having the shares in its name, but real controller is R Limited. He is the beneficial owner. But what about the amount lying in the bank account and the property purchased by Messrs R Limited? On that, I would say that there is misunderstanding, absolutely plain misunderstanding on the part of the learned IO of law, because every transaction is a separate transaction. Transaction between B and R is a separate transaction. It may be Benami. Between B and R Limited is a separate transaction, because B Limited is giving check and getting in return share certificates in the most valid manner. So B Limited becomes the shareholder as far as R Limited is concerned. And R Limited gets the money for the share certificates issued. So it is a legitimate money, own money. Now, after that, it becomes own money of Messrs R Limited. It is not proceeds of the property, because Benami property, if the Benami property shares, then the proceeds will arise only when the shares ceases to exist, when the shares are transferred by B Limited. Shares are not yet transferred, so there is no question of proceeds. So amount received in the bank account of R Limited is own money now, and therefore the property purchased from that money is also own property of R Limited. So neither the bank account of R Limited nor its property can be attached. That is absolutely beyond attachment. But of course, this shares, the way things have been carried out, he has made it liable to be attached. Though there could be certain other schools of thought. For example, one other school of thought says, shares are in fact are also sham property here, because those are papers only, not intrinsic value. But I mean, there would be debate on that. Similarly, whether a transaction subjected to GAR be also exposed to Benami? Yes, because when PPT test is invoked, principal purpose test is invoked, and the real entity, the real worth of an entity is, rejected invoking GAR, then Benami provisions can check in. For example, in this, I will explain how the GAR can be made applicable to invoke the provisions of PPT Act. Suppose there is one parent company in USA which makes investment, which wants to make investment in India, but instead of making directly in Indian company, it chooses Singapore or Mauritius route, sets up one company, makes investment in that company. That company in turn makes investment in Indian company, and benefits under treaty available to beneficial owners. Beneficial ownership of assets of that is say denied on the ground. The treaty benefit is denied on the ground that the Mauritian company is not a real entity, it is just a paper company. The real controlling company is the parent company. So under PPT test and under invoking provisions of GAR, the benefit of treaty is denied. Now, whether this structure can also be then roped in under Benami, that is the shares held by Indian company be treated as Benami? Yes, can be. Because if the allegations are proved that Mauritian company is having no existence whatsoever, I mean, these words are very important. No existence whatsoever, just a paper company. Then the real controller is US company. Since the real controller is US company, then there can be allegation of the income tax department. Then the beneficial owner or the real owner of these shares would be the US company, and the Indian company would be the Mauritian company will be Benamidar, US company will be beneficial owner, and the shares held in that company would be treated as Benami asset. It's Benamidar being Singapore company and beneficial owner being US company. Though there would be attempt from the income tax department, but it is a very hard nut to crack because every transaction is transparently disclosed. So, and the law has allowed it to happen like that. But there would be definitely a long debate on this issue. Now, this slide will help you understand that how there could be certain actions taken under Companies Act would also, or SEBI law can also make the situation difficult under Benami law. Now this SBO concept has come, significant beneficial owner. Under there's some disclosures are to be made under Companies Act 2013, it's section 19, which makes a mention that this particulars about the real shareholder who is controlling the shares in the realistic manner, that needs to be given by the company, provided by the company, and every such shareholder to the company. So if any such information comes on record, then the situation which is arising in item number 3 here, that I mean, where the shares are held through some other entity. So Mr. A is holding singly, jointly, or through others, holding shares in the company through, say, Mr. B. So in that case, again, provisions of Benami can be applied, and the situation may be such that it may give rise to, I mean, the asset being Benami. So the moment this information is served on platter to the company, the information will be a ripe information for the BPU to be picked up. Then under this law, it is necessary for us to understand whose burden is to prove what. This game of burden under any legislation is a cardinal principle. I mean, it's very important facet to be understood to effectively handle the proceedings. So under Income Tax Act, the concept of burden is different. The burden may be on the assessee. But under Benami law, the fabric of this law is peculiar, is unique, is absolutely different from that of income tax law. Here, the burden is upon the person who is alleging a Benami, a transaction to be Benami. And that such person is the IO in this case. So burden of proof is upon the IO, as has been held by the Honorable Supreme Court in P. Lilavati, Mangai Thai Hammal, and various other earlier judgments. And when I argued this matter before the Honorable Tribunal has applied this judgment in the context of existing new PBPT Act also. So it has created a bridge between the judgments and the PBPT Act and said that the burden of proof will remain upon the IO even after introduction of new PBPT Act. Then this example, it is of Gujarat only. I would not name the city, I do not remember. But this is something which is worth knowing by everybody here. So one NRI gentleman who wanted to make investment in India, who wanted to buy some agricultural land in India, but NRIs cannot buy agricultural land. So he thought of making investment. He takes help of his Indian friend who is living in India to buy some land, and he would make investment. So he made investment through his friend, and his friend purchased property in Indian friend's name. And but suddenly some search action takes place upon the builder from whom this land was purchased for development, and consequent search takes place here also because of some involvement of own money. So getting afraid of all these actions, the Indian friend states before the income tax search team that I have nothing to do with this transaction. It is done on behalf of my foreign friend, and he just paid the transaction, he just made the investment, I did it, and all those things. So this own money thing, whether the own money addition was made or not, God knows about that. But new two departments came into picture. One is FEMA, other is Income Tax Department. So because of this kind of thing, the FEMA swings into action. Ki no, NRI is not allowed to purchase. So if Indian friend is saying it is on behalf of foreign friend, this is violation of FEMA. Then BPU takes action. Then BPU says, since Indian friend is nothing but a known entity, so he becomes Benamidar, foreign friend beneficial owner, this property Benami. So FEMA and Income Tax Department is waiting what to do, but Benami department makes attachment of that property. So these kind of situations we are facing here in the Benami law. And so therefore one must be very careful now. The compliance of law has become necessary now. That time has gone when the cost of non-compliance was lower and the cost of compliance was higher. Now the cost of non-compliance is much, much higher than the cost of compliance. So it is better to make compliance. So, but I personally believe that the time has come. We as professionals also, we must make requisite studies of all these laws, and we must advise our clients and guide them to make compliance of the law. Otherwise, life is going to be very, very difficult. So the next topic which I am picking up here is anti-money laundering law. As I said, you must have noted that the Enforcement Directorate was the most active department in the country. So since Enforcement Directorate was the most active department in the country, the law is being enforced with full amount of vehemence. What is exactly money laundering? Let us try to understand from there. Somebody says conversion of black into white is money laundering. But my dear friends, that is just a case of, I would say, tax evasion. So money laundering is much more than that. Since money laundering is much more than what is that? So in terms of colors, if we want to understand, it is like conversion of red into white. Red would denote here blood, which will in turn denote crime. So something related to crime, if it is done and reported as non-crime, it will be money laundering. So in simple words, if some proceeds are earned after commission of a scheduled offense, and those proceeds are portrayed as if they are not from proceeds of crime, then that is the act of money laundering. For example, a person does some theft and or does some smuggling, which I said. So, but in the accounts he reports is earning from trading. So this situation will be a situation of money laundering. The money, whatever he's earning from smuggling, which is bringing in his bank account on account of under the claim of trading of the legitimate goods, then this will amount to money laundering. The amount which he introduces in the system will be the proceeds of crime, which is liable for attachment under Section 5, and then ultimately which is liable for confiscation under Section 8 of the PPPT Act. So these are the three stages which are involved in the process of money laundering. Stage 1, when commission of scheduled offense takes place. What is scheduled offense? In fact, PMLA 2002 contains a schedule, which is a list of offenses that if any of the offenses is committed, like theft, forgery, violation of pollution control laws, PC, Prevention of Corruption Act, or say certain provisions of Black Money Act, if these are violated, no income, it does not contain any mention of Income Tax Act. So if any of these offenses is committed, and if any money is derived by commission of such offense, say money earned from ransom, money earned from theft, so that is stage 2, that is there are generation of proceeds of crime. And then stage 3 is done, that is these proceeds of crime are portrayed as if they are not proceeds of crime, but from legitimate activities by way of placement, layering, or integration. So commission of money laundering by placement, layering, and integration. So once the stage number 3 happens, the process of money laundering can be said to have been complete. Now, what do we exactly mean here with the terms proceeds of crime? Proceeds of crime mean any property derived or obtained directly or indirectly by any person as a result of criminal activity relating to a scheduled offense, or the value of any such property, or where such property is taken or held outside the country, then the property equivalent in value held within the country. So it is divided into 2 parts: when the money is taken abroad and when the money is within India. So when the money is taken abroad or the property is taken abroad, so then equivalent value in India can be, so of any other property can be attached. But if the property is within India only, then the property which is derived from proceeds of crime, or its value, whatever value it has become, or whatever value in return it has been received. Say suppose a person steals goods and he sells goods, a person steals gold and in exchange of gold it gets diamond. So that equivalent amount of gold which is converted to diamond, then diamond can also be attached. But the only condition is that its trace should be from the proceeds of crime only. Not any unconnected property is covered here, as per my little understanding. And this understanding has been endorsed recently by Honorable Punjab and Haryana High Court in the case of Seema Garg, and the Seema Garg judgment has been also approved by Honorable Supreme Court. And there are few other judgments, like Kumar Pappu judgment is a very good judgment to be read from Andhra Pradesh High Court. Satyam Computers, again good judgment from Andhra Pradesh High Court. and also Ali Bal Sharif, another judgment from Delhi High Court. So the three high courts are very clear on the concept. Then scheduled offense, as I shared with you, that scheduled offenses are the offenses as prescribed in the schedule to the PMLA, which is divided into three parts, Part A, Part B, and Part C. Scheduled offense is the genesis of the offense of money laundering, as there cannot be any offense of money laundering unless and until an offense provided in the schedule of PMLA has been first committed. Then another striking example, sorry, just a minute. Yes. The another reason why this law has become quite harsh is because of the reverse burden kind of proof. The fabric of our constitution is based upon the principle that every person is deemed to be innocent unless proved guilty. And burden to prove the person as guilty is upon the shoulder of the person who is accusing him of being guilty. But it is said that unfortunately this principle has been compromised in PMLA. Whether it is compromised, yes or no, I would say it is partly yes, partly no. This principle has not been completely compromised here. It's not reversed in total. It is not that for everything it can be said to the accused, okay, you prove you have not done money laundering. The situation is a little different. If we read the section, we'll find that this burden has been partly discharged or partly shifted to the accused. As I said, there are three stages, necessary three stages before a person can be charged with the offense of money laundering. Stage number one, that there should be commission of scheduled offense. 2, there should be earning of proceeds thereof. 3, those proceeds should be converted or portrayed as clean money. That is, tainted property should be portrayed as untainted. Now, if we see carefully, the shifting of the burden is only with regard to stage 3, meaning thereby the prosecution has to prove beyond doubt that the person has done the offense, scheduled offense, and he has earned proceeds of crime therefrom of this much amount. Then if these two things are proved, then with regard to the third stage, that whether the amount has been portrayed as clean money, that burden is upon the shoulder of the accused that he has not done so. So first two things, the burden remains upon the prosecution, about the person who is accusing. Then this striking example of money laundering and one of the most prevalent cases in ED all over the country is this, that suppose a large size borrower obtains loan from the bank or other lending institutions, and say of the ticket size of rupees 1,000 crore. And if unfortunately that goes bad, loan goes bad, it becomes NPA, there is a default in repayment. Bank becomes restless. So finding no other solution, it files an FIR on the ground that the loan was obtained by fraud, or the allegation is that the end use is not within the permissible framework, etc., etc. Then on the basis of said FIR, the ED would pick up the case and register an ECIR, Enforcement Case Information Report, alleging that the fraud was committed, scheduled offense was committed, whereby this loan was taken. So it becomes proceeds of crime of the said scheduled offense. And therefore, and this loan has been portrayed as clean money, whereas it is obtained by illegal means. So therefore, wherever this has been used, any such property is liable for attachment. So this is one of the most prevalent cases going on in the country. And here comes the useful role of chartered accountants, because when these kind of allegations are made, it becomes very, very difficult to decipher the money trail, that what are exactly those properties which are proceeds of crime, which may be subject matter of attachment under Section 5 of PMLA. So how this can be, how the role of chartered accountants can be fulfilled, I mean, in handling notices and attachment orders, by explaining this money trail. For example, by finding out the sources and quantifying the amounts of proceeds of crime from the commission of an offense, identifying the properties to be attached, acquired with POC, identifying the source of such properties and connecting it with the POC, identifying loan utilization in the attached property, calculation of the correct value of the POC, valuation of the property attached in comparison with the alleged POC, proper financial accounting and analysis, then preparation of money trail for the attached properties demonstrating the source of funds. So this can be within a special domain and skill set of a seasoned chartered accountant. Then briefly, I will touch upon about the Black Money Act. In fact, instead of going into the jungle hustle bustle of intricate provisions, I will try to simply explain this law in this manner. That this law was introduced in the country to bring back the money which is stashed abroad, properties or money lying abroad, belonging to India. So it talks of only two things: undisclosed foreign asset or undisclosed foreign income. So if a person is having undisclosed foreign asset, makes failure in disclosure the same in India, he is liable for non-disclosure, then penalty, and then for taxes also. Two, if any income earned from foreign sources while he was residing in India, if not made part of Indian income tax return, then under Black Money Act, that is also liable to be taxed. So two things: foreign value of foreign asset or any undisclosed income earned outside India, which is not reported here in India. So two things must be reported. Now there are many ticklish questions which might arise: how and what, etc., etc. Some of the examples I will take to make a simple declaration that there may be situation where even innocuous transactions may be roped in under BMA. For example, what happened? One student went to UK to study law, to do LLM, and when she came back, she forgot to close that bank account which she had opened as a student for her subsistence and carrying out his activities as a student. She forgot to close that. Not only forgot to close, forgot to disclose the same in Indian income tax return even after she became the Indian resident. Now complaint has been filed, and on the basis of that, section 10 notice has been issued and penalty notice has been issued for her under BMA, alleging that this is a case of non-disclosure, penalty, and the tax also to be paid on the peak amount lying in the bank account. So A, there has to be disclosure. B, the disclosure has to be to the satisfaction of the assessing officer, meaning thereby mere disclosure will not be enough. Non-disclosure will of course make it liable for penal action, but disclosure may save the assessee from the penal action of non-disclosure. But to save himself or herself from the action of escapement of tax, she or he must also certify the officer that there is no tax evasion with regard to the income earned outside India or any asset held abroad. So two things are required now: A, disclosure; B, satisfaction of the AO on the ground to the extent that there is no tax evasion with regard to these two things. Proportionate share of income tax on the corresponding income has been paid in India. These two things have to be satisfied. Only then a person can claim to save himself from the clutches of the BMA. So that's all. I wanted to bring the basics. Now, whatever questions are coming to your mind, you may please discuss with me. Let me read some of the questions which are there on the chat box. I think if the organizers will consider it appropriate, they can switch on the mic if somebody wants to speak. But before that, let me ask this question from Ms. Veena Jodhwani, that what was the evidence that cash was handed over to B by R? Very, very good question. So this example which I had given was based upon certain set of facts. That facts are like this. And facts were that R admitted that he handed over cash to B because he himself made a surrender that this is a bogus share capital. So bogus share capital means this only. So he kept on admitting. Then on those admitted facts only this kind of action is possible, not otherwise. So that is why I am saying that everything will depend upon the facts. Facts are not like that. No, it cannot be presumed to be benign. This is a deemed law, and under deemed law, there is no scope of presumption. Then burden of proof lies with whom under PMLA and PBBT Act. Under PBBT I have explained, under PMLA I have explained. Still, if there is anything, you can ask again. Then proceeds from gambling covered under PMLA. Anything which is scheduled offense will be covered. Then Gurdeep Baggaji is saying, in case of NRI who receives salary abroad, not taxable to income tax, whether any disclosure as per BMA is required. No, somebody who is non-resident, whose income is not liable to be taxed in India, no problem. No problem at all. I am saying something which is liable to be taxed in India, taxes are not paid, will be covered. But Bagga Sahab, there is one problem. So long as he is non-resident, no problem. But if non-resident shifts back into India, he becomes a resident, then he is liable to disclose all his assets, whether located in India or whether located outside India, in the FA schedule to the income tax return. If he omits to disclose after becoming resident his assets located outside India, he may be liable for penalty for non-disclosure under section 51 to 54 of the BMA. He may not be liable under section 10 of BMA, but for non-disclosure, he may be liable. Then I think somebody had raised hands. Let me stop, share it, and let me see who is raising what hands. Sanjay Joshi ji, I think you can unmute yourself and raise your question. Ask your question, please.
Am I audible, sir?
Yes, Sanjay ji, please.
An Indian citizen who has formed a foreign trust which is regulated by a foreign country trust law got a notice from income tax department under black money law as well as under income tax law, and he has no control over the trust which was formed somewhere in the past. He doesn't even control the bank accounts, but somehow the ITD has access to those bank accounts. The proceedings are going on. The beneficiaries of the trust are all foreign citizens. They never came to India over last more than a decade. This situation, what worst thing can happen? I mean, can department tax the assets of the Indian trustee or that of the foreign trust?
Very good question. In fact, more facts will be required. This is a very, very controversial issue which you are raising, and maybe on this forum, requisite facts you are not able to provide to me, but I would like to attempt to give my view on this. Firstly, you must take note of section 14 of BMA, which is a Benami law within BMA, which talks about the thing that the real beneficiary owner can be held liable. His action can be taken upon him. He may not be the registered owner, but if he is the real beneficiary owner, I will read it for your benefit. Let me go through section 14 of BMA. If I remember correctly, it should be section 14 only, for the benefit of everybody who is present here. And very interestingly, very smartly, this act has been created. Direct assessment or recovery not barred. Section 14 says, nothing in this chapter shall prevent either the direct assessment of the person on whose behalf or for whose benefit the undisclosed income from a source located outside India is receivable, or undisclosed asset located outside India is held, or the recovery from such person of the tax or any other sum of money payable in respect of such income and asset. So this section is little dangerous from that angle. That if you say, sir, मेरा कोई लेना देना नहीं है, मेरे तो नाम से कुछ नहीं है. No, because he is saying of the person, either direct assessment of the person on whose behalf or for whose benefit the undisclosed income from a source located outside India is receivable, or undisclosed asset located outside India is held. So on whose behalf, say Mr. A is living in India and any asset is located outside India, which is held on in his behalf, then A can be made liable here. So any resident from any angle can be covered here. If this cannot be proved, then nothing to worry. But if it can be proved because of the trust deed, because of any other conduct, any email, any benefit he has derived, then the action can be taken under BMA. If there is no escapement of tax from A, or any income earned by him from foreign sources or Indian sources which has been utilized in trust, No problem. Yes, sir. Next, any other hand? Or we can give quietus to the deliberations of the day. I think Haritji, you can ask if anybody wants to ask any question. Otherwise, we can close the deliberations. I am getting some compliments. In fact, I would say that you all are entitled for the compliments because the kind of interest which you are showing, the keenness with which you are attending the session. And as I was saying that I have tried to understand the life, the way we should live our life after studying these laws, especially Benami law. You know what I could gather from this wonderful piece of legislation, Benami law, is that whatever I think is mine, whatever is mine, I should believe that only to be mine. Whatever is not mine, neither I should think it is mine, nor I should disclose it to be mine. Whatever I am inside, I should be same way outside. So get rid of Benami life and live real life. Most of the time, you will notice we live a Benami kind of life. Get rid of that. And then you see the pleasure, the bliss of life we get. Thank you very much. So anybody coming for the closing ceremony, or we have to do it ourselves? From anybody from organizers, Manisha ma'am or Haritji or anybody else? Please check in. Please come in.
Hello, sir. Sajid here.
Boliye Sajid ji.
Sir, it was a very nice session. Only 2 or 3 questions are there, I think, which was not replied during the lecture.
Whether these are there on the message board?
Yes, sir. I just read out that questions and you just need to reply them.
Let me read. I will read it myself.
The one question was that if owner denies the ownership for Benami property, action will be taken against whom?
It will be taken by the government. It will become so. जो किसका नहीं है वो ईश्वर का है. So it becomes the property of the government if it is not of yours.
Okay, sir. And only means 2 questions were there. Second question is, in case of NRI who receive salary abroad, not taxable to income tax, whether any disclosure is required as per the BMA?
This I have answered that so long as he is non-resident, no disclosures are required. The moment he comes back, kindly take a note of this. The major problem is going to be suffered by those people who will come back to India. Because the moment they become resident in India, everything located abroad shall become liable to be disclosed here. And if not disclosed, huge penal action is waiting.
Okay.
So kindly make disclosure. Kindly do take a note that those persons who are settling back, their full disclosure should be made. Global disclosure has to be made.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Just let me check that if there is any other question at the end of the session or not.
I think, yes. Parekh is asking some question. If the government start taking proper bank statement for proof of payment, then Benami can be avoided. Actually, there are many facets to it. I definitely agree with you on one part, that law has been made but without a policy framework. In absence of an appropriate policy framework, huge number of actions are being taken under Benami law, and some of them are not required at all. They are conceptually wrong. Technically, case can be fitted as Benami, but holistically speaking, they are not good for the economy of the country. So a good, robust, clear policy framework is required. Then, sir, you are saying which forum to disclose. Disclosure means disclosure to the income tax department in your income tax return, that is FA schedule. Then, yes, the one you mentioned about student, that a student should have disclosed in her income tax return here in India under FA schedule. Even if she was not SSE, after coming, everybody becomes SSE. And even if not, but file return for this purpose only, that disclosure is to be made. Then Veena ji is asking, sir, would like to have more detailed session with live case studies in future if possible. Always my pleasure, Veena ji. Anybody can organize, and I always enjoying being amongst my professional brothers and sisters on any topic with regard to any of these economic offenses, whether on anti-money laundering law, BMA, PMLA, whatever you choose. Always.
So there is a question from Dinah Matthias. If a person buys a property in his name, no joint ownership, but the brother is living in that house, is that Benami?
Very good question. This is a question of the day. Problem is not in living. As I say, Benami says do something else, do something else. Thing is something else, doing something else. So living is not a problem, but he cannot claim to be owner. So in one case, I will give a real life example what happened. Two brothers thought of buying a property jointly. So it was a house having 2 floors, ground floor and first floor. So elder brother thought he will live in ground floor and younger brother will live on first floor. And that is how they bought the property. But when the time for registration of the sale deed came, younger brother was out of India. So instead of delaying the registration of the deed, the younger brother sent his sum of rupees 5 crore to elder brother. Elder brother registered the property, made the entire payment to them, and bought the property registered in his name, total property. Then both started living happily. But when the assessment proceedings of younger brother were going on, so he made some house tax rebate, etc. claim in his income tax return. When the AO saw the sale deed to check the ownership, he saw that it is not his name. He asked that it is name, not in your name. It is name of somebody else. Why should you get the rebate under housing loan, interest, etc.? So that he gave the correct reply that, sir, it is registered in the name of my brother, but I am the owner. That is why I am claiming. So whatever happened in the income tax return, forget about it. But that property has been treated as Benami. Elder brother as Benamidar, younger brother as beneficial owner of the first floor. So this is the situation. If brother is living only, so he can live, no problem. I can give to my brother for living, but he should never claim it as himself as owner. So problem is in claim, not in usage. Then Ranjanji is asking, resident for the purpose of BMS and PML is as per IT Act. Yes. Under PMLA, it will be as per FEMA. Under BMA, it will be as per Income Tax Act under Section 6 of Income Tax. Then really enjoyed your live section. Thank you. Yes, Anuj is asking, one of my clients took a loan from NRI for construction business purposes. Now he repaid the loan to the NRO account of the lender. Question is, can the lender remit back the money to his country of origin? That is for the lender to see. I mean, within the framework of FEMA laws, that whether he should report it to the AD bank and take it back if possible. I think there is no problem, but if it is in NRO account, then you'll have to check the rules there. What are the rules applicable? Accordingly, go ahead. Please do not violate the rule. That is why it should be deposited in NRE account only, because from there remittance repatriation is possible. From NRO account, I don't know. You'll have to check under FEMA regulation. And for last 1 month, you are doing FEMA only. So rather, I should ask this question from you, Anuj. What you have learned in FEMA so far? You should enlighten the gathering here. Is IRB approval required? Again, the same thing. You kindly check it under FEMA laws. Yes, sir. Anything else? Gurdeep ji is asking, sir, in this case, brother case, can it be case of legal ownership instead of Benami Act? Yes, that is what I am saying. In the case of brother, the only exception is if it is under joint ownership. Otherwise, there is no exception. I cannot buy property in the name of my brother and claim myself as owner. No, not permissible. Whatever strange it is the law. Howsoever strange. Yes, sir. So I think we can close the
There is
session.
a-
No other question. Yeah.
One
Ranjan
question
is
from
asking.
Niranjan. If tenant claim to be owner of a property as he is residing there since long, how to interpret such a situation?
Very good question, in fact. So, tenant is not the registered owner, right? Since he is not the registered owner, how can he claim the ownership? If he claims the ownership, then of course, one can file a claim that since you are not the owner, if you are the registered owner, get the registration done in your name. Otherwise, you will become the beneficial owner and the person who is carrying the. But in this case, the registered owner will deny. So, if both the parties admit, yes, it is a correct situation, then it will become Benami. Then if tenant has become owner, he should get the registration done. But in case any person first denies the ownership of property and later want to declare his ownership, can he do that? Now this is a very interesting situation. Provisions of Indian Evidence Act have to be taken into account. Section 91, 92, 101, 102, 106 of Indian Evidence Act, they have to be considered. So documentary evidence takes precedence over the oral. So this is a written rule. So even if by mistake in the statement he says I am not the owner, later on he can correct it. But the burden to prove the fact now, the second statement will be upon him. Next is, what is the time limit under PMLA and Benami law?
PMLA, Benami law.
ये बड़ा अच्छा क्वेश्चन आपने पूछा है सर. You know, मैं जब इसकी हिस्टोरिकल बैकग्राउंड चेक कर रहा था कि ये जो नया बेनामी लॉ बनाया है ये कहां से इंस्पायर्ड है, where from it has been taken, most of the provisions. So checking the history back, I reached up to 5,500 years old legislation. Yes, Srimad Bhagavad Gita, drafted 5,500 years old. Most of the things have been picked up from there. For example, what did Shri Krishna say? समय अनंत है, ना इसका प्रारंभ है ना अंत है. So time is endless. So they have made this, both the pieces of legislation as timeless beauty, neither past nor future. So the way it has been drafted, the Benami law, all past transactions are being roped in, and there is no cap on the future time limits. If the transaction is done today, there is no future time limit till when an IO can take action. 5 years, 6 years, 10 years, 2 decades, lifetime, even after the lifetime of the person. I don't know why and how it has been drafted like that. Yes, the brother can, Deepak Shetty ji is asking.
In brother case, can the older brother register a gift deed to transfer younger brother's share? Will
Yeah,
that have avoid contract?
He should have done it before the younger brother would have made himself a claim of ownership. Timely it should have been done. Absolutely right.
Sir, Mr. Niranjan Sai has raised hand. Can I unmute him?
Yeah, please.
Hello, sir. In my tenant case, I just raised. So my question is that generally landlords are giving property on land for 11 months only, because there is some fear that tenant will claim to be the owner. So
Yes.
will this act will protect the owners?
No, in that case, there is no problem because it is tenancy only. If tenant claims himself to be the owner,
Yes.
then only the problem will arise. So long as he is a tenant, there is no problem.
I think that under the Rent Act or somewhere the beneficial ownership are deemed to be the ownership.
No, it is not like that.
So why generally the owners are giving only for 11 months rent? Because I heard
That is only because the longer he stays, then his claim in the ownership becomes strengthened, and then if the landlord has to vacate, some issues of compensation arise, etc., etc. So there could be some dichotomy between the Rent Control Act and the PGBT Act.
yes,
Right.
that was Reason why I asked you a question. Yeah.
Yes, yes. So if the ownership is long and if both the parties admit, yes, he is now the real owner, then he may be roped in under Benami law also.
So both the way, which what will be the correct
Very
situation?
good, very good situation you have raised. Good
Yes, yes.
point.
Yeah, yeah. So
Sir,
I feel Benami will protect the situation of
Overtake.
ownership. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. So
Thank you.
Madhuri Vayal is asking, will there be any burden on legal heirs if beneficiaries are passed away?
if they are holding properties now.
Benami property is Benami property. Because one case I am handling, their legal heirs have been made as Benamidar or beneficial owner on behalf of their ancestor, forefather. But the only thing is prosecution may not pass on. But if the property is Benami, the government can take it away anytime. Now,
Sir,
Srinivas
as
Shambhag
you-
is asking, does it mean that there is no limitation under Benami Act or PMLA? That's right. Na bhoot na bhavishya, timeless beauties. No, nobody is able to digest it. When I'm saying there's no time in it, people are saying, "यार ऐसा कैसे हो सकता है?" But it is. Show me any limitation, please. I am also waiting to see limitation. Yes, sir.
to what
Anything else?
extent the recovery can be made from legal heads?
No,
From
that very
Gurdeep
property
Bagga.
can only be attached. Only that very property can be attached. Nothing else.
Okay. I hope there is no other question.
Right then. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. I
My,
think there is no
I
other
will-
question.
No, what I will do, I will send my
Yes, sir.
PPTs to Manisha madam or Harijji or whomsoever would like to take it from me. And then you can get it circulated amongst the participants, please, all the participants. And
Okay,
still,
great.
if you have query, please feel free to discuss it with me.
Okay, sir. Sir also shared some other article on above. There is a one means request from Gurdeep Bagga.
Yeah, I have got one or two articles. One of my articles is titled as, this has been published by CTC in its course. It's a good article, you must read it. If you live in India, you can be held as an offender even if you have not committed a crime yourself. You must go through this book.
Okay.
And it is available online also. And few articles I have written on ITT online on Benami law. If you punch my name, probably you will get that article. And this PPT I will circulate.
Okay, sir.
So my spellings are ASHWANI. So correct spellings may be punched in YouTube or Google. Then probably you will reach the right place to extract my videos and my articles.
Okay, great, sir. Great. I think, sir, there is no other questions coming.
So then we can close the session as of now. And I convey my sincere thanks to all of you.
And sir, I also from on behalf of the Ahmedabad branch, we and all the on behalf of all the participants also, sir, I also request thanks you. And sir, actually this big session become very interesting because the topic was become very interesting, like a Benami, and people have taken so much interest, and I have seen your enthusiasm at a next level, sir. So it was a very great lecture, and we can say one of the very enjoying lectures we have done so far. So on behalf of entire Ahmedabad branch, sir, I thanks to you, and on behalf of all the participants also, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
हाँ सर मोहन